In this presentation, we are going to talk about natural versus conventional hair growth regimens. Really, this is for anybody who's torn between a natural versus pharmaceutical approach to hair regrowth. We're going to talk about the regrowth potential. We're going to talk about the risks associated with both approaches and a whole lot more so that you can finally get clarity on what to do and start taking action. So if you're interested in natural hair regrowth, it's no wonder. You've probably seen some of the success stories from our website demonstrating that an all-natural regrowth protocol can lead to temple hair regrowth, or even overall thickening, crown improvements, hairline improvements. You just see case after case after case of individuals from our site and online demonstrating significant success with natural interventions. And at the same time, you've also probably seen people report results with a pharmaceutical grade approach. Here's an example from our site. Here's another. Here's another. Again, the same degrees of improvements that you are seeing over and over and over again. And so you look at these anecdotes and you think, how do you decide? How do you decide between a natural approach, which produces results like this, or a pharmaceutical approach, which produces results like this? Now, in addition to these anecdotes, layer in the fact that people have different worldviews. Some people just won't take pharmaceuticals no matter what. It doesn't fit within their worldview. Some people have an all-natural preference. Some people just want great outcomes. And then you have misinformation online. You have fear-mongering over FDA-approved drugs. You have real reported side effects from consumers. And then you have profit incentives from companies, natural companies wanting to demonize drugs to sell you into their own product line, pharmaceutical companies with a history of cheating clinical trials and obfuscating results, selling things that might not be totally safe. So when you're searching for what to do and you're trying to navigate this space, you're going to bump into extreme absolutist opinions and no nuance online. Here's what we see from forums all the time. Finasteride is poison. Natural treatments don't work. This person is a pharmaceutical shill. Don't listen to them. This person is a snake oil salesman. Don't buy their stuff. And in the end, you are just left more confused than when you started searching for a hair loss treatment, which means you're not going to know what to do. You're going to delay starting any treatment whatsoever, and you're going to keep losing hair as a result. So here is our framework on how to avoid this mess entirely. We're going to talk about why you need to ignore these anecdotes when deciding between a natural versus conventional treatment approach. We're going to talk about 3 key metrics that are absolutely critical in making decisions on what to do. We're going to show you how to compare natural versus pharmaceutical interventions, and we're going to talk about their long-term outcomes. And with this information, you're going to be able to make decisions starting today. If you don't know who I am, I'm Rob English. I founded Perfect Hair Health more than 10 years ago. I'm on the editorial board of a dermatology journal. I'm a consumer advocate, and me and my team, we publish papers and systematic reviews about hair loss to get people in the best possible position for success. So let's talk about why you need to ignore anecdotes. Online, you are going to find before and after photos supporting nearly any regrowth regimen. Let's just look at the options here, natural versus conventional. You have photos on the left demonstrating natural regrowth. You have photos on the right demonstrating pharmaceutical regrowth. Anecdotes represent what's possible, not what's probable. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's look at anecdotes in the context of this chart. You can see that this is a chart with a bunch of individual data points from individual people. And in the middle of this chart, there's this trend line, and this represents the average trend across all of these data points. So this point right here, these points right here, these represent what's possible. These are anecdotes. And this line right here is what represents what's probable. That's the average anticipated result for anybody. And sometimes the difference between possible and probable is huge. For example, with before and after photos circulating the internet for any regrowth regimen. So let's go back to this chart. We've got the anecdotes, and then we've got the trend line. These markers up here are these level responses for natural interventions. or conventional interventions. These are the types of things that are going to bubble to the top of forums on the internet, to the top of the YouTube channels that you might be watching. And yet down here is what's probable. And it's much different than the anecdotes that you see, because what's probable is the average trend line. What's possible are the individual stories that you're hearing about. So you need to understand that what's possible is just one person's result. What's probable is the expected result. When you are deciding between natural or conventional approaches, it's important to favor what's probable. Otherwise, we can actually reason our way into any regrowth regimen using any anecdote whatsoever. So with that in mind, how do we navigate this challenge and make decisions on natural versus conventional treatments? Well, we've developed a way to do this inside of our site, and it's with something called treatment metrics. These are a standardized way to compare treatments to one another, natural, pharmaceutical, you name it. And these treatment metrics, they prioritize what's probable rather than what's possible. And I'll explain this with a few examples. So if you go into our ingredients database inside of our site, you're going to see things that look like this. We're going to start with some of the metrics that we've standardized across all different ingredients, pharmaceuticals, and interventions. So these markers right here that you're seeing, these are known as evidence quality. And evidence quality is a really important marker. The first thing is that it's a scale from 0 to 100, and it basically says, what are the odds that my experience using this product or this ingredient will match the results that we see in the clinical studies? So in other words, will my real world results trying this product match what I read in the clinical research about this product? And in general, we want to use this protocol to determine if evidence quality is weak or strong. Less than 50% means there's a lower likelihood that your real world results are going to match the clinical trial results. Greater than 50% is a higher odds. We want to prioritize the higher odds. And if you're interested in learning more about how we calculate these things, we have a team of people that have run literature reviews on every single ingredient and pharmaceutical for hair growth that's out there. Basically, hundreds and hundreds of these things we've produced. And we haven't just produced them for every single ingredient. We've also done it for the formulation, whether that product is formulated as a topical or an oral or a shampoo. And if you want more information about why evidence quality is so important and how it can be used as this barometer, check out our ingredients database. Check out our video about evidence quality inside of our treatment mistakes series, and you'll be able to understand more about why this is so important. So now let's move on from evidence quality to the next metric, which is regrowth potential. You can see it right here. Regrowth potential is a scale from 0 to 4, and it basically says, how much hair regrowth can I expect from trying this thing? 0 to 1 is microscopic hair gains. You can see them under a microscope, but you cannot feel them or see them in person. 1 to 2, slight cosmetic hair regrowth. 2 to 3, significant cosmetic hair regrowth. And 3 to 4, remarkable regrowth. Results beyond FDA-approved drugs. We have built a treatment metric regrowth potential compare treatments feature, which you can see inside of our membership site. It's linked in this slide, and it allows you to gauge the regrowth trajectories and their potential for regrowth across any intervention. Anything that people will generally try to sell you for hair growth is found on the left-hand side of our treatments tool. And then on the right-hand side, we show the regrowth outcomes in terms of the months of use you're trying a product. And in addition to that, how much potential for hair regrowth there is. And this is all built off of clinical data, and you can look at every single marker here and review the clinical studies that we've used to build these charts. So this tool, alongside our ingredients database, really useful for comparing treatments. The last marker is long-term viability. And this basically is a marker, again, from 0 to 4, that asks, can I do this treatment long-term? So long-term viability is an incredibly important marker, because if you cannot sustain a treatment, you cannot keep up with it long-term, you cannot continue to reap its benefits. So the way that we ask this question in clinical literature is, does this treatment cost less than $30 a month? Does 2+ year data exist showing sustained regrowth? Does 2+ year data exist establishing a safety profile? And can it be administered at home in less than 1 minute per day? And if the answer is yes for any of those questions, you get a point. If you want to learn more about these treatment metrics and the long-term viability, you can look at our treatment metrics overview. But use these 3 metrics to compare across any treatments and then start making decisions about those treatments after you have that information. So let's start to make some comparisons. We'll start with FDA-approved drugs. And we'll do one of the most popular ones on the planet, topical minoxidil at 5%. So here's the regrowth trajectory for topical minoxidil at 5% twice daily. We can see that across 30 months, generally, we're going to break that plane into cosmetic hair regrowth starting around month 3, and then results tend to peak around months 5 to 7, and then after month 8, new results are no longer likely. And in fact, you start to trend downward a little bit over time while still remaining above baseline at year 5. So this is the average anticipation for topical minoxidil. You basically get slight cosmetic hair gains, and it takes at least 5 to 7 months to produce those gains. And after month 8, new results are probably not going to happen. So how does this compare to something like finasteride? Well, finasteride actually takes a little bit longer to work. You can see that finasteride breaks that plane for cosmetic degrees of hair regrowth on average starting around month 6. But then the biggest gains from finasteride don't even happen in year 1. They happen between year 1 and year 2, at which point results tend to start to plateau around months 24 to 28, and you hold relatively high above baseline. And you might decline a little bit, you might stay stable, but in general, the data are very strong in suggesting that you will remain above baseline for as long as you're using finasteride. So you can see that minoxidil works faster, but finasteride works better long-term. So how does something like this, which has a regrowth potential max out of 3, compare to natural interventions? Well, let's start with low-level laser therapy. We can see here, low-level laser therapy, not that impressive overall. So on average, over a 30-month window, it tends to produce some hair count improvements. But for the average respondent, again, these lines are the probable response, not the anecdotes. For the average respondent, you are basically not going to see significant hair gains. You're going to end up in that category of 0 to 1, whereby you might see microscopic regrowth, but you're not going to see that or feel that in person. So what about natural supplements? Natural supplements have a really similar trajectory. Natural supplements have the capacity to break that cosmetic plane of regrowth, and they typically max out at around month 12. And the best supported ones that we can find in the database are saw palmetto and L-carnitine L-tartrate. But beyond that, generally speaking, they don't usually lead to massive hair gains, the same things that we see with finasteride. Natural topicals, it's a similar story. We generally do not see these report cosmetic degrees of hair regrowth. They can help at a microscopic level, but we're looking for cosmetic degrees of regrowth. Scalp massages, really similar curve that we see. Some of the anecdotes that you saw earlier are from people who are up here in that 3 and 4 category, but the average response is right here. And the same is true with microneedling as a standalone therapy. So the truth is that when we compare natural and conventional treatments, it's obvious that the clinical data strongly suggests that natural interventions can help. We have dozens and dozens of studies demonstrating that, but they do not help with regrowth as much as pharmaceuticals. And on top of that, natural interventions, they also have less long-term safety data and efficacy data. So if you want to learn more, again, check out our Compare Treatments feature. We spent months and months doing these literature reviews, building these databases based off of terminal hair count and hair density improvements in the clinical literature. So if you are still interested in a natural approach to hair regrowth, you're going to need to try multi-targeting because we see people get the best outcomes with this. So don't just take a saw palmetto supplement and assume that your work is done and you're going to get great outcomes. Maximize your chances for success. Instead, try that saw palmetto supplement to lower DHT levels. Also use L-carnitine L-tartrate to influence potassium ion channels. Add in a high quality topical and also add in microneedling. This is an example of targeting multiple mechanisms across multiple formulations and pathways, which is going to maximize your chance of success on a natural protocol and put you in a position where you might become one of those before and after photos. But again, possibility versus probability. To increase that probability of cosmetic gains on a natural protocol, multi-target. So you have to be thinking about these things. So in that respect, you have to consider a natural topical stack that might look like saw palmetto plus L-carnitine for a supplement, a natural topical that might have ingredients or trademarked names such as Redensyl, Capixyl, Procapil, saw palmetto, melatonin, caffeine, adenosine triphosphate, even rosemary oil, and then enhance the effects of those things by adding in something like microneedling or scalp massages. And then the next thing that you're going to need to do is establish a timeline for trial and error. So in these treatment charts, we have a minimum time that you need to see results and a maximum time whereby new results are no longer likely. So you can see this right here for topical minoxidil, 3 months is the minimum amount of time that you would need to see cosmetic degrees of regrowth. So if you're not trying that treatment for at least 3 months, you're not giving it enough time to see any effect whatsoever. And on the other side of this is the maximum amount of time that you would need to see new regrowth, which is month 8 for minoxidil. After that, we don't see terminal hair count or hair density improvements from that drug. So you can use these minimums and maximums referenced inside our compare treatments feature to start to build out timelines to fairly and objectively assess if you're seeing an improvement from your topical stack, your supplement stack, all of it. And if you're trying a natural protocol and by month 6 to 8, you're not necessarily getting the results that you want, it's time to escalate. Start to layer in other options. The last thing that you want to think about is long-term outcomes, or one of the last things that you'd like to think about is long-term outcomes. So long-term outcomes reference safety and efficacy. Safety is, can I use this forever without hurting myself? Efficacy is, will my hair gain sustain over many years? Questions often asked in this respect are, is this treatment going to keep my hair above baseline? If I stop the treatment, will I lose all my hair gains? What's going to happen to me after 20 plus years of using this thing? And am I opting into any unknown risks? The answers are going to change depending on any intervention you're exploring. We don't ever want you to make the assumption that just because something is natural, it must be safe. We see all the time in the literature early data suggesting that a natural supplement like vitamin E or selenium looks safe and maybe even effective for something like prostate cancer, only for 5, 10, and 15-year data to actually show a reverse trend, that that same supplement, vitamin E, selenium, actually worsens outcomes and might even increase your risk of prostate cancer. So just consider these things as you're navigating your treatment options. We have a lot of videos on this inside of the site, and watch our treatment mistakes series to really dive into the nitty-gritty and fully understand better profile of your risks for both natural and conventional. Conventional treatments also have risks, both known and unknown. So I'm not just trying to pick on the natural interventions here, but we do want to have these perspectives in mind. There are really no free lunches when it comes to regrowth. Everything comes with risk. Everything comes with some potential for reward. Those probability lines that we see here, this represents the average anticipated reward. Of course, you could end up being somebody up here or somebody down here, but this is the average anticipated response based off of peer-reviewed clinical data. Now, the other thing is that a lot of people who don't want to use things like finasteride or reduced DHT, they don't realize that there are some really high leverage combination approaches that they can take that might improve their hair gains even further and substantially. One of them is you can play with this inside of your compare treatments feature. What you can do is you can just click this button if you're exploring this intervention and you want more regrowth and you want to escalate your protocol. You click this button here, and after you click it, you will see a newly recommended protocol that is designed to get you even better results by leaning further into the mechanisms of that original treatment. And in this case, we can escalate from topical minoxidil, 5% daily, to a higher strength topical minoxidil combined with retinoic acid to enhance its activation and penetration. And on top of that, we add in microneedling, either once weekly or once every other week. And we can effectively, according to the clinical literature, virtually double our regrowth outcomes and potential with that kind of protocol stack. Now, the last thing that we want to think about here is that on these charts, we also project out to 60 months and we denote the exact moment whereby we don't have strong data to make inferences. And that is where this line that's strong and solid shifts to a dotted line. And you can see after this point, the treatment data is limited, so you need to interpret this with caution. So think about these things as you are exploring your treatment options. We've done our best based off of comparative studies, hair count studies, terminal hair density improvements, published high-quality peer-reviewed literature to project these types of treatment outcomes. But they're not a perfect science. We're just doing our best. So these dotted lines, everything after that represents uncertainty, not just with efficacy, but also with safety. So think about that. So what about sustained hair gains? Well, if you want to learn more about sustained hair gains, we talk about long-term outcomes for both conventional and natural treatments. And if you want to learn more, you can check out our ingredients database and go into any single ingredient and learn a little bit more about how we calculate these outcomes. But our recommendations across our entire site, when you're looking at all of your options, are basically to prioritize ingredients and hair growth treatments that have an evidence quality of higher than 50, have a regrowth potential of greater than or equal to 1, and have a long-term viability of greater than or equal to 2. If you do this, you're going to massively increase your odds of sustainable regrowth and success. And you can do this by just sorting inside of our ingredient database by those metrics. Just click the regrowth potential button and sort. Do the same with our ultimate guide treatments. Click the regrowth potential and sort. And if you want more information about this, please check out these resources. I will link them below. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate this. And I hope that this presentation helps you make some decisions between natural versus conventional hair growth regimens. I understand that it can be really hard to make a choice here, but we have a very clear path forward. What you need to do is you need to look at all of your options, understand the comparative differences in hair growth outcomes, make a choice and stick with it so that you reach those timelines where you can objectively evaluate regrowth. And if you reach those timelines and you see success, great. Our work is done and we wish you the best with the rest of your journey. But if you reach those timelines and you haven't yet seen success, you have to escalate the protocol. And we don't want you thinking, maybe I just need more time for regrowth, because the clinical data very strongly suggest that that is not what you should anticipate. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.